You're welcome once again to today's class. Today we're going to look at properties of a set. Now there are basically 5 properties we are going to look at today. First to talk about is the square root of a squared equals to square root of a times square root of a, and then the answer is going to be equal to a. This simply means that whenever we have a set multiplying itself, it should give us the same value within the radical sign. Is that okay? So for example, if we have the square root of 3 squared, this should be equal to the square root of 3 times the square root of 3, and the answer should be equal to 3. Is that okay? So in simple terms, it means that this square here will cancel the square root symbol, and then we will be left with 3 as an answer. That's the meaning of the first property. Secondly, the square root of a squared. Now look at this and look at the first property. Do not get confused. This is where the number within the radical sign is being squared, not the entire thing being squared. Is that okay? So it's not the entire radical being squared, but rather only the number within that is being squared. When this happens, the answer is still equal to a. Let's see. For example, if we have the square root of 5 and we square it, now this is going to be equal to the square root of 25. And what is going to be the square root of 25? It is 5. Therefore, it also operates just like the property 1, where the square here will cancel the square root sign. Is that okay? But there are 2 different expressions. Alright. The third property says is about division of surds. So if you have a surd dividing a surd, then it should be equal to the square root of the numerator divided by the denominator. Is that okay? So let's look at an example of this. If we have the square root of 6 divided by the square root of 2, looking at the property, this means that everything should be written as square root of 6 over 2, and this can be simplified to get the square root of 3. Is that okay? So if you have a radical sign or the surd dividing another surd, this is how you can rewrite it. Alright, Now the fourth property talks about multiplication of surds. If we have two surds multiplying, what we only do is that we pick the numbers within the radical sign and multiply them. So you see that the square root of a times the square root of b is equal to the square root of ab. For example, if we have the square root of 3 times the square root of 2, this will be equal to square root, and then we will pick the numbers within the radical signs and multiply them. And so this becomes the square root of 6. Is that okay? Good. So that is basically that. Let's look at the final property. This is very, very important. Now the final property talks about addition and subtraction of sets. Is that okay? Now we can only add or subtract sets when the radicals are the same. I mean, when the sets are the same, the numbers within the radical signs are the same. Is that okay? So let's look at the property. It says when we have a particular number, let's say m, multiplying a square root, a surd, plus or minus n times the same surd, then this is going to be equal to m plus or minus n times the surd. I know you're finding this confusing a little, but let's pick an example to explain more. If we have the square root of 5 plus 3 square root of 5. Now the property says that since the number within the radical signs are the same, since we have 5 in here and then 5 in here, all we do is that we only work with the numbers outside the radical sign. That is, so the number outside here is 1. Basically it's not written, so you need to remember that it's 1. So it is 1 plus the number here, which is 3, and then we multiply them with just one of the square roots, one of the surds. So this will be equal to 4 square root of 5. Is that okay? Let's look at another example. If we have the square root of 5, let's use the same square root of 5 minus 3 square roots of 5. Applying the same property, this time becomes 1 minus 3 and then the square root of 5, and this will be equal to negative 2 square root of 5. Is that okay? Yeah, so that is all the last property is about.